Stop weaponizing the United States. That is what people are telling us right now. But the fact is that Congress is struggling to get spending under control, and so weaponizing the United States is the best they can do. Now, here's what I can tell you. For decades, we have heard the same things over and over again. We've heard you can't do that. We've heard that is not possible. And, sorry, we can't afford that. But in the end, something always happens. Something always gets done. However, at this point, both parties are weaponizing the United States, and it's all because of our national debt, which is over $31 trillion. Now, on January 19th, 2023, the United States reached its debt limit, meaning that it was somewhat difficult to borrow money, or they were unable to borrow any additional money without the prior approval of Congress. Well, getting this approval is going to be rather difficult. It is not just cut and dry. It is going to be a process. Here's what I can tell you. Democrats want to completely eliminate the debt ceiling. This would allow the U.S. government to borrow an unlimited amount of money to pay for anything that they see fit and just operate. While Republicans want to see spending cuts. And if Republicans get spending cuts, then they will agree to raise the debt limit one more time. But this will be the last time, is what we are hearing. Now, this is where both parties are weaponizing the U.S. debt. The debt ceiling has turned into a weapon for Republicans because they are using this to get Democrats to agree to reduce spending. And one of the first places that Republicans want to see a reduction in spending is in the IRS. And I know we've talked about this before, that Republicans were going after Social Security and Medicare. They want to see cuts. They want to see some changes. Former President Donald Trump says he does not want to see one penny in cuts to Social Security or Medicare. Because of that, the Republicans are going to go after the IRS. That is now their priority. They say there is no reason to spend $80 billion in additional IRS funding when we don't need it, and they likely will not use it. Even now, the IRS has access to billions of dollars, but they've only hired 5,000 additional customer service agents. They've opened up 361 in-person tax assistance centers, and they've started to use automatic scan documents. That is their plan. But again, is $80 billion warranted for that? No, it is not. But Republicans say this is not enough to warrant the need for $80 billion. And the reason they can't justify this cost is simply because of how much we have spent in the past 15 years. Just get this. Since 2008, the national debt went from $9 trillion to now over $31.3 trillion today. We spent trillions of dollars on housing bailouts, right? Banking, 20 years of military in Afghanistan, virus response measures, consistently increased spending for defense and social programs, and this is costing us now. And yet, Congress, they're struggling to come to an agreement as to how we get out of this. A lot of the spending that we have seen has come in the past 3 years. Okay, we've spent about over $18 trillion. The virus was a huge part of this, but as Republicans say, that amount of money must eventually stop, and that time is now. But Democratic Representative Bill Foster out of Illinois, he had this to say. He says, and I quote, "Weaponizing the debt ceiling and using it as a pawn in partisan budget negotiations is dangerous and repeatedly brings our nation to the brink of default, which would be disastrous to the U.S. economy, something we've witnessed as recently as 2011 when Republicans created a debt ceiling crisis that resulted in the first ever downgrade to the U.S. credit rating." He also went on to add, "The government has an obligation to pay its bills. Threatening to default on our debt is the same as ordering an expensive meal at a restaurant, eating it, and skipping out without payment. We can and should have a real conversation about overall spending, but the full faith and credit of the United States has never been compromised. Well, let's go and dig into this. He says weaponizing the debt ceiling, using it as a pawn for budget negotiations, is dangerous and repeatedly brings the U.S. To the brink of default. Okay, that's true. That yes, if we keep getting to that debt ceiling and Republicans say, you know what, we're not going to vote for it, we're not going to increase the debt limit, and then it brings us really close to a default, that is disastrous for the U.S. economy. However, economists also believe that, yes, that's disastrous, but what is also a disaster is if we just keep spending and spending and spending without any limits. That would be dangerous to the U.S. economy as well, and to the American people. So this is why it's very interesting to see what's coming out of Congress at this time. But what has been proposed, and this is coming from Representative Bill Foster, is he proposed the end of the threat of default act. This would simply eliminate the debt ceiling. There would be no debt ceiling. This would also likely increase spending in future years, which if we increase spending, that means we just go deeper and deeper into debt, and we will never pay it off. Now, the federal government has been spending far too much money for far too long, and economists believe that this needs to stop. Let me just give you an example of what we have spent. The U.S. government spent $4.4 trillion in 2019. This was before the whole virus. In 2020, we spent $6.5 trillion. Yes, we did get stimulus checks, we got enhanced unemployment, we got PPP loans, we got a lot of stuff. Okay? In 2021, $6.8 trillion. In 2021, we saw a lot of rental assistance. We saw that in 2020 as well. We saw funding for certain states. We saw more stimulus. We saw additional child tax credits. There was a lot of stuff there as well. And in 2022, we saw $6.3 trillion in spending. So in the past 3 years, this is because of the virus, where we went from $4.4 trillion in 2019 to 6.5, 6.8, and 6.3. What was that, 19.6 trillion dollars that we spent in 3 years? We can't keep up with that spending. However, what is interesting is that, and this is something that Republicans have brought up multiple times, is that President Biden has stated the pandemic is over. Yet, we are still on track for 2023 to spend $6 trillion this year as well. So, is the pandemic over? Are we out of the woods? Some say yes, President Biden says yes, but when it comes to spending, his actions speak louder than words. That no, we are not out of this. Which also brings up the question, are we going to see this public health emergency end anytime soon? Some are expecting this is going to end in the middle of April of 2023. However, the actions are speaking louder than the words. Are we going to end the public health emergency? At this time, it is unclear, but we will see very soon. What I can tell you is that both parties are weaponizing the U.S. They want to see either spending get reduced, and this is from a Republican standpoint, or Democrats want to completely eliminate the debt ceiling so that the U.S. government can operate pretty much freely as it wants to. So, we will see what happens moving forward, but I promise you I will be here every step of the way. I will fill you in on all the latest news and updates. Again, thank you guys for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Consider subscribing. I'll see you guys on the next one.